The first time I noticed the shadows, I thought they were mere flaws in my process. My name is Lena Hartwell, and I've spent more years than I care to count in dark rooms, watching images emerge like ghosts on photographic paper. I am a researcher, a chemist, and a seeker of truths hidden in plain sight. My latest project, a new type of photographic developer, was supposed to reveal details in photographs beyond the normal spectrum. It was my attempt to see the unseen. The developer was my own concoction, a blend of traditional chemicals and some less orthodox ingredients. I theorized that this mixture could unveil subtle nuances of light and color typically invisible to the naked eye. That evening, as I worked alone in my lab's darkroom, I felt the familiar thrill of discovery. The red safety light cast an eerie glow over the trays of chemicals and paper, my little sanctum of science and solitude. I dipped the first sheet of exposed paper into the developer. The image slowly materialized, an ordinary scene of the university's botanical gardens, a test subject I'd photographed many times. But as I inspected the photograph, a chill ran down my spine. In the midst of the foliage, where there should have been nothing but plants and shadows, was something else. A faint, almost imperceptible outline. It was like the shadow of a figure, but distorted, elongated in an unnatural way. I blinked hard, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. I convinced myself it was a fluke, a result of my experimental developer not being quite right. I adjusted the mixture, recalibrated my measurements, and tried again with a different photograph. This time, a simple still life. Yet, as the image came to life in the chemical bath, there it was again. That same shadow, clearer now, unmistakably humanoid but lacking any defining features. It loomed over the still life, a silent, uninvited presence in a scene where it had no right to be. My scientific mind scrambled for a logical explanation. Contamination? A problem with the camera? But deep down, I knew. These shadows were not errors. They were something else. Something my developer was revealing. Something that had always been there, just out of sight. I finished my work for the night, feeling a mix of intrigue and unease. As I locked up the lab and stepped out into the cool night air, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had uncovered a door to something profound and terrifying. The shadows in my photographs were more than chemical quirks. They were glimpses into an unknown realm, a hidden spectrum of reality, and I had just opened the way. Each night, as I submerged myself in the dim, red-lit world of my lab, the shadows grew bolder. I had unwittingly embarked on a journey into the unknown with my photographic developer. Initially, the shadows were mere whispers of form, but now they took on distinct, unsettling shapes. I found myself increasingly drawn to these images, as if the shadows were calling out to me, beckoning me to look closer, to understand. I began experimenting with different subjects, different settings. No matter where I pointed my camera, a crowded street, an empty hallway, the tranquil park, the shadows were always there. They were no longer vague silhouettes. They had evolved into humanoid figures, standing, sitting, some even appearing to move. With every photograph I developed, the figures became more defined and, terrifyingly, more aware. It was in a photo of an old bookstore that I first noticed their eyes. The shop was a place I frequented, a haven of quiet amidst the city's chaos. In the photograph, the aisles of books were as I remembered, but among them lurked a shadow. This one was different. It was looking directly at the camera, at me. Its eyes were dark voids, and yet they seemed to express a haunting awareness, a consciousness. It was as if the figure in the shadow was aware of being observed, and it did not seem pleased. Each new batch of photos intensified my fear. The figures started to show emotions, anger, longing, perhaps even malice. I began to feel watched, not just in my lab, but everywhere. I couldn't escape the sensation that unseen eyes were on me, following my every move. My nights were plagued with restless sleep and nightmares. I dreamt of the shadows, of their cold, dark eyes. In my dreams, they reached out to me, their fingers stretching from the photographs, grasping for something beyond their two-dimensional prison. Despite my growing terror, my scientific curiosity pushed me forward. I needed to understand what I was seeing. Were these figures simply anomalies, tricks of light and chemistry? Or was I peering into something real, something existing alongside our own reality, invisible to the naked eye? I dove into research, scouring old texts on photography, optics, and even the paranormal. I spoke in hushed tones with colleagues who delved into fringe sciences, seeking anyone who might have seen something similar. But nothing I found could explain the figures in the shadows. As I continued to work, the figures in the photographs became more distinct. Their postures more ominous. It was as if they were growing stronger. Their presence more dominant with each image I developed. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer just a viewer, but a participant in something much larger and more sinister. I was standing on the precipice of an abyss, staring into the unknown, and the unknown was staring back. The shadows invaded every photograph I developed, becoming a constant, haunting presence in my work. These shadows, once mere curiosities in my photographs, now interacted with the scenes they inhabited. It was as if they were part of the world, yet apart from it, bound by rules I couldn't comprehend. One photograph, in particular, changed everything. It was of a crowded city square, taken in broad daylight. The people were just silhouettes against the bright sun, but among them were the shadows, starkly clear. They were interacting with the people, reaching towards them, their hands inches away from the unsuspecting crowd. The people in the photograph seemed oblivious, but the shadows, they were purposeful, intentional. I began to feel a growing sense of dread, not just in the lab, but in everyday life. I would catch glimpses of something in the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow, a figure watching me from a distance. Each time I turned, there was nothing there, but the sensation of being observed, followed, never left me. I realized that my developer might be more than a chemical solution. It could be a bridge between worlds, a doorway that I had unwittingly opened. The thought terrified me. Had I exposed our world to these entities? Was I responsible for whatever might cross over? In my lab, surrounded by the images of these ominous figures, I made a decision. I had to stop my experiments, destroy my research. But as I reached for the first photograph, intending to rip it to shreds, I froze. In the image, a shadow figure was looking straight at me, its dark eyes filled with an intelligence and a purpose that I had never seen before. It was as if it knew what I was planning, and it was not going to let me go that easily. The shadows in my photographs were no longer just images. They were presences, entities with their own wills, and I had become their unwilling conduit to the world of light. The darkness was no longer just encroaching. It had arrived, and I was its unwilling herald. My days and nights became a blur of obsession and fear. I was trapped in a cycle of my own making, entwined with the shadows that had invaded my world. The more I sought to understand and control them, the more powerful and aggressive they became in my photographs. It was as if my attention fed them, gave them strength. Desperate for answers, I delved deeper into esoteric and forgotten sciences. In the university's most neglected archives, I discovered an ancient tome, its pages yellowed with age. It spoke of the veil of shadows, a thin barrier separating our world from a darker, unseen realm. According to the text, this veil could be pierced by certain alchemical processes, revealing the entities that lurked on the other side. The book was filled with warnings about the dangers of such knowledge, of beings that envied the living and sought to cross into our realm. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My developer wasn't just revealing these entities, it was weakening the barrier between our worlds. Each photograph was a window, a thinning of the veil, and with every exposure, I was unwittingly inviting them closer to our reality. That night, the boundary between dream and reality shattered. I dreamt of the Shadow Realm, a place of endless night and whispering darkness. The entities surrounded me, their forms more terrifying than any photograph could capture. They spoke in a language I couldn't understand, yet their intent was clear. They wanted to come through, to exist in our world of light and substance. I awoke in a cold sweat, my heart racing. The line between my research and my own sanity was blurring. As I stumbled into my lab, a horrifying sight awaited me. The photographs covered the walls and workbenches, and in each one, the shadow figures were watching, waiting. The image of my lab was the most terrifying. The shadow was no longer just reaching towards my notes. It was standing in the lab, almost out of the frame, as if it had started to step into my world. In a frenzy, I began to destroy the photographs, tearing them to pieces. But it was too late. The air grew cold, and a palpable sense of dread filled the room. The red light of the darkroom seemed to dim, swallowed by an encroaching darkness. As I turned, I saw it. A figure, standing in the corner of my lab, just beyond the reach of the light. It was one of them, a shadow made flesh. Its eyes, dark and endless, stared at me. And I knew in that moment that I had not just unveiled a portal. I had opened a door, and something had stepped through. The figure in the corner of my lab was more than a shadow. It was a nightmare, made real. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The entity took a step forward, and the temperature in the room dropped further. It was as if the very air was being drained of life. I could feel its presence enveloping me, a pressure that was more than physical. It was in my mind, whispering thoughts of despair and hopelessness. With a monumental effort, I broke the paralysis that gripped me. I lunged for the remaining photographs and developer, intending to destroy them. But the entity moved swiftly, blocking my path. It was then I realized its intention wasn't just to intimidate or observe. It was guarding the portal it had used to enter our world, the photographs and the chemical solution. In a desperate, last-ditch effort, I grabbed a container of developer and hurled it at the entity. The liquid splashed over it, and for a moment, the figure seemed to waver, as if the developer was eroding its form. Seizing the opportunity, I dashed around it, grabbing as many photographs as I could and throwing them into the sink, dousing them with water and chemicals. The entity let out a sound, a hollow, echoing noise that was more felt than heard. It was a sound of anger and frustration. As I destroyed the last photograph, the figure began to fade, its form becoming less defined, returning to the shadow it once was. With the last of the shadows vanishing, the normal light of the lab returned. I was left standing in the midst of chaos, surrounded by the ruins of my research. The silence was deafening. In the aftermath, I couldn't bring myself to speak of what had occurred. Who would believe that I had opened a door to another realm? The photographs, along with the unique chemical solution, were gone. I destroyed my notes, vowing to never dabble in such things again. But the truth remains inescapable. I had glimpsed a reality beyond our own, a shadow realm where entities dwell, unseen by most. I sometimes wonder if they are still watching, waiting for another door to open. The shadow in the solution ends with an unsettling ambiguity. I, Dr. Lena Hartwell, continue my work, but with a newfound respect for the boundaries of our world. Yet, in the back of my mind, the fear lingers. The shadows might still be out there, in other photographs, captured unintentionally by unsuspecting photographers, waiting for someone else to uncover the dark truth hidden within the solution. In the heart of a city where modern life had moved on, leaving behind echoes of its bustling past, stood an old pharmaceutical lab. Its once pristine walls were now canvases for graffiti, windows shattered, giving way to the relentless invasion of ivy and rust. This relic from an era of scientific ambition beckoned to those drawn to the city's forgotten corners. Among these seekers of the hidden and lost was a group of urban explorers, diverse in their backgrounds, but united by a shared thirst for uncovering the secrets veiled by time and neglect. They had traversed abandoned subway tunnels and derelict buildings, but the lab promised something different. A glimpse into a world of scientific endeavors lost to history. The explorers approached the lab under the cloak of twilight, their footsteps cautious, respectful of the sanctuary of the Forsaken. The front door, barricaded with planks and chains, was a testament to the years that had passed since the lab's abandonment. With careful precision, born from experience, they removed each obstacle, their movements a choreographed dance of curiosity. Inside, the lab was a catacomb of the forgotten. Shelves laden with dust-covered vials and scattered papers stood as silent sentinels of the room. Broken glass crunched underfoot, echoing through the hollow halls. The air was heavy with the scent of chemicals, now faded, and the mustiness of decay. The heart of their discovery lay in the innermost chamber of the lab, a room that once pulsated with the lifeblood of research and innovation. Here, amidst the skeletal remains of lab equipment and faded charts, they found a half-destroyed notebook. Its cover was leather, cracked and peeling, the words Project Nirvana barely visible against the wear of time. The pages within whispered of desperation and brilliance. Yellowed by age, they cradled a formula written with a hasty hand, the ink blotted in places where the writer's urgency had outrun their pen. Diagrams and annotations crowded the margins, a chaotic symphony of scientific thought. Intrigued by the mystery cradled in the brittle pages, the explorers felt a collective surge of excitement. This was more than a relic of the past. It was a puzzle begging to be solved, a siren call to their inquisitive natures. They resolved to recreate the formula, to breathe life into the words and diagrams that had lain dormant for years. Unbeknownst to them, this decision was the first step on a path that would lead them into the depths of the unimaginable, a journey into the heart of Project Nirvana. The urban explorer's journey led them back to their makeshift lab, a place far less grandiose than the abandoned pharmaceutical facility, yet imbued with a sense of purpose and determination. It was here, in a room filled with salvaged equipment and makeshift apparatus, that they set about their task. Under the dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights, the group meticulously assembled the required chemicals, sourced from various contacts and old laboratory supplies. The air was tense with anticipation as they combined each component, adhering as closely as possible to the fragmented instructions from the notebook. The process was methodical, each step taken with a reverence for the science and a caution born of the unknown. As the final ingredient was added, the solution in the beaker changed. It shimmered like liquid starlight, an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with hidden life. The transformation was mesmerizing, captivating the group with its enigmatic beauty. It was as if they had distilled the essence of the aurora borealis into a single vial. Alex, whose courage was as much a part of him as his shadow, volunteered to be the first to test the mysterious concoction. His hand was steady as he brought the vial to his lips, his expression a mix of bravery and an unspoken fear of the unknown. With a silent nod to his companions, he drank. The effect was immediate and profound. Alex's eyes glazed over with a sheen of faraway wonder. His body remained earthbound, but it was evident that his mind had embarked on a journey through realms unseen. The others watched, a mixture of awe and apprehension etching their faces as Alex began to narrate his experience. His words painted landscapes of surreal beauty, of colors that had no name, and architectures defying the laws of physics. He described towering structures that spiraled into the skies of other worlds, landscapes where the ground pulsed with a life of its own, and skies that shimmered with an ethereal light. But as the hours passed, a darkness began to weave its way through his visions. Alex spoke of great calamities, of shadows stretching across lands, consuming everything in their path. His voice, once filled with wonder, now trembled with a hint of fear. He told of entities vast and ancient, whose gaze brought madness, and of skies torn asunder by unspeakable forces. The group listened, their initial fascination turning to a creeping sense of unease. What had started as an experiment in chemistry was evolving into something far beyond their understanding. The notebook, a silent witness to their endeavor, lay open on a table, its pages seeming to stare back at them with a mute warning. They had set forth a chain of events that now seemed to have a life of its own, a path that they had unwittingly chosen to walk. The experiment with Project Nirvana was no longer just about scientific curiosity. It had become a journey into the unknown realms of the mind, and perhaps into the very fabric of reality itself. As the days turned into weeks, the city found itself ensnared in a web of unexplainable phenomena, each event an eerie reflection of Alex's haunting visions. The urban explorers, once united by curiosity, now found themselves bound together by a shared sense of dread. The formula from the Project Nirvana notebook, once a source of intrigue, had become a Pandora's box of foreboding revelations. Authorities, drawn by the group's unnerving accuracy in predicting events, began to circle closer. The explorers' clandestine meetings became exercises in paranoia, each member grappling with the fear of exposure and the guilt of what they had unleashed. Yet, the allure of the unknown kept them tethered to their experiments with the enigmatic drug. As the substance's hold on Alex deepened, his trances revealed not just glimpses of potential futures, but also twisted reflections of his own psyche. The line between his subconscious fears and the external reality blurred, creating a kaleidoscopic nightmare that threatened to consume not just him, but all who were drawn into its orbit. The lab became their sanctuary and prison, the outside world, a landscape marred by the shadows of their experiment. Reality itself seemed to warp around them, with each of Alex's sessions bringing them closer to an unseen precipice. They began to see the world through a lens tinted by the drug, a reality where the surreal and the mundane danced in a macabre embrace. Their journey into the heart of Project Nirvana was no longer a mere exploration of the unknown. It had become a descent into a realm where the very fabric of reality seemed to unravel. Each revelation brought them closer to a truth that was as terrifying as it was alluring. The group, once eager to peel back the layers of the unknown, now found themselves struggling to hold on to the remnants of their sanity. The city, meanwhile, continued to bear silent witness to the unfolding drama. Unseen forces seemed to stir in the shadows, drawing the threads of fate tighter around the explorers. As they delved deeper into the mysteries of Project Nirvana, they began to understand that they were not just passive observers of this unfolding narrative, but active participants in a story that was being written in the ink of their own fears and desires. The convergence of their experiment with the fabric of reality had set them on a path from which there was no return. The explorers stood at the threshold of an abyss, their every action rippling through the unseen currents that shaped their world. In their quest for understanding, they had become both the architects and victims of a reality that was slowly fracturing under the weight of their discoveries. As the boundaries between reality and the haunting visions from Project Nirvana continued to blur, the explorers found themselves caught in a relentless spiral. The city around them, once a bustling metropolis, now seemed to mirror the dystopian landscapes that haunted Alex's visions. The group, bound by their shared secret, felt the world they knew slipping away, replaced by the surreal and the inexplicable. In their shadowed lab, the explorers faced their reckoning. Debates raged amongst them, a battle between the desire to understand the profound mysteries they had uncovered and the growing realization that some doors, once opened, might never be closed. Before they could reach a consensus, fate intervened in the form of a sudden and violent intrusion. Authorities, having pieced together the bizarre occurrences and the group's eerie accuracy in predicting them, stormed the lab. In the ensuing chaos, the notebook, the heart of Project Nirvana, became an unintended victim. Amid shouts and confusion, it was consumed by fire, its secrets seemingly turning to ash. In the aftermath, the group was left scattered and broken. Each member grappled with the aftermath of their journey into the unknown. The world outside, largely oblivious to the true nature of what had transpired, continued its indifferent march. Yet for those who had tasted the fruit of Project Nirvana, reality was forever altered. Yet, as the explorers sought to regain their footing in a world that now seemed alien, a chilling revelation unfurled. In the shadows of the destroyed lab, a figure emerged, clutching a pristine copy of the formula. The message was clear. The fire had not ended Project Nirvana. It had merely set the stage for its ominous continuation. Haunted by their experiences, the explorers were left to traverse a reality irrevocably altered by their actions. They had sought to unveil the mysteries of the unknown, only to find themselves ensnared in a narrative far beyond their control. The legacy of Project Nirvana was a testament to the perilous path of unrestrained curiosity, a reminder of the delicate balance between the pursuit of knowledge and the unfathomable depths that lie beyond the reach of human understanding. In their quest, they had not only discovered, but also become part of a story that continued to unfold in the shadows of a world forever changed.